know if you can hear, but there's a fan going, an exhaust fan actually going in my kitchen, although it just has a filter in it, no actual exhaust, but we won't go there. The reason is I cooked some bacon, and I'm making soup. Trouble is, the soup is supposed to use something called gnocchi, and my little small-town grocery store didn't have gnocchi. So, I'm not at the level where I can make my own. So I said, well, what could I substitute? And I found these frozen dumplings that are supposed to go in Nefla soup. And yeah, that's just a total fail because they are not cooked through. So right now I'm trying to get them to cook through, and the bacon's just sitting there saying, whatevs, dude! And yeah, and the fan's still getting the bacon smell out of my house, hopefully. And yeah, that's a problem with small towns. Now, I did talk to the manager of the grocery store trying to get him to help me to find gnocchi, and he couldn't find it. And then he says, well, I'll tell you what, salesman comes once a month, so within about a month I can probably get it for you. I'm like, yay! But, he's trying. So I'll give him credit, and when the gnocchi does arrive, I'll probably make this again with the proper ingredients. So, yeah, who knows if this soup's going to turn out. I may be going hungry. But I have a thing for small towns in North Dakota. Now, mine is a lot bigger than the small town we're driving into. Not a lot, but bigger than the one we're driving into. This is Mott, North Dakota. Up there on the left on the hill, you can see the Mott Elementary School. And no criticism of Mott, but if ever there was a school which needs to be replaced, there it is. The elementary school is a little bit better other than the handicap thing and the electrical wiring thing and whatnot. High school, which you see there, and there's a modern addition on it, are awful. The high school and the elementary school are connected by a weird, crooked, narrow, dark underground tunnel, which I guess the kids actually walk through to get to the cafeteria, which is in the basement of the elementary school. Here you can see they are actually replacing it. I'll get to that. But there are chair lifts everywhere because there are stairs everywhere. They don't have elevators as far as I saw. So chair lifts all over. Way back then they'd go, oh, let's do a half level because it's cool. And we don't have handicapped people because it's the 1920s, which is when the building was built. Oh, whoops, now we do. Actually, we did back then. They just didn't care so much. They didn't have ADA laws and so on. So, you have a kid in a wheelchair or even a kid in crutches. I mean, there's 2 of them walking around my school right now on crutches. It's hard enough walking around my school. I can just imagine what it's like going up 3 stories in an elderly building on narrow 1920s staircases. I know a guy who actually went to Mott to evaluate the school because in North Dakota, we do... there's a 5-year advanced ed evaluation to get certified. And anyway, they had trouble even plugging in their laptops in the room they're supposed to meet in because the outlets were not up to code. It was just a big problem. So, yeah, like I said, Mott needs to be replaced. Actually, even the addition, it's more modern. I wouldn't mind owning the science room because it's nice, but... overall, I mean, thin walls, horrific acoustics. I mean, you can hear what's going on everywhere. It's just noisy all the time there. I do not like it. And looks cool because you have this 2-story big atrium thing in it, but you'll see it. But ew. By the way, while I was in that gas station getting coffee, ran into a former student. Didn't recognize her at first. That was embarrassing, but they change after they leave high school. In her case, she'd actually lost a lot of weight and cut her hair, and finally I recognized her because of her smile and her voice, because honestly, she does not, even when I came home, I looked in an old yearbook, she does not look like she did in high school, so good for her. Sounds like she's doing all right. She described Mott as quaint. It is. But I don't mind Mott. I actually once considered a job there. I think it turned out better where I ended up, but it was something to consider, I guess. I work with a guy who's a Mott alumnus. He back when he was in school, which isn't that long ago because he's younger than me, but there used to be a Catholic elementary school in Mott. Now that's closed. They ran out of kids, which is kind of a common theme with North Dakota small towns. But anyway, so Mott last year voted to not build a new school, but then they re-voted again the following year, and they did finally agree to it. And they're going to build it on the same area. I guess they're going to start here and then tear one of the buildings down, then build the next building and tear the other one down. So, good for them. Sometimes governments want to build stuff they don't need. Mott needs it. Absolutely. By the way, you can see the side of the addition here. It's just a very cheaply built addition. I mean, not nice at all. The atrium looks cool. You can see the outside windows there. There's the original old high school. There's an awful, awful gym inside of it. But there's classrooms in that top story, and you get to them by stairs. Elementary school. It's just too much infrastructure problems. To make it accessible to the handicapped is absurdly expensive to get the wiring, the plumbing, the fire safety, all those things up to code. It's just, I think old buildings are cool. I live in one, but there is a point sometimes where you just have to say, maybe it's time we start over. Because some of these old buildings just have way too many problems. Now, I'm going to admit something here. I started close to Mott because it was a very, very, very foggy morning. And you couldn't see anything except for the road most of the trip up to this point. So I had some plans of stopping at a few places, and I didn't do it just because of time. And that's why you're missing the beginning of the trip. This part from Mott to Beulah is an hour and a half. I had been driving at this point for a little over an hour. So, yeah, I've ended up on the road for a long time. So 2.5 hours, the way I've been doing my driving at videos, I've been doing half an hour and just mostly at real speed. Well, I just thought, skip the fog, and I'm just going to spare you all that. This is September 24th. The very next weekend I went down to Needles. So after I get this set done, look forward to the beginnings of a spectacular trip, in which I discovered the limits of my card that's in my dash cam. But anyway, so I'm headed north now. I should have written down the route numbers, but I want to say 49 or 41. I think 41. What we were on there, boy, I don't know. 22? No, that doesn't sound right. I have no idea what road we were on, but I'm pretty sure we're on 49 or 41 now. Although I don't swear to it. No, we're not. I lie. We're on some other road. I don't know what road we're on, but we're on it. I'm headed from Mott to Elgin, so just look on the map. I mean, there's only one paved road from Mott to Elgin, and I'm on it. So, yeah, the 49/41 is where I go north from Elgin toward Beulah. And that might not even be it till I cross the interstate, so I don't know. But I am running this at higher speed because I am aware that there's that whole slow TV thing, which I'm trying to do. But at the same time, there's that whole, it's the Great Plains, and unless you're right there to see it, it doesn't change much. So, speed it up. When we get to Elgin, that's another town that I have never actually been in the school. That is a cool looking school. I mean, the Mott school's cool looking too, although I hate the addition. Elgin has a really cool looking Western type of school, and then an awful looking addition on it. I don't know if it's a well-built addition or anything. I've never been in it. From the outside, it reminds me a lot of Mott, but I don't know. Haven't been there. Just driven past it, taking pictures. But I will say, Elgin does have a pool in its school. Now, admittedly, it's a city pool. It just happens to be located in the school. But that's kind of convenient because then the school can use it for like their PE classes. And, my town, we can't do that. And then the city can use it all year because it's a pool. It's indoors and it's North Dakota. So that's kind of neat. So I think that's a neat way to do things. I was in the town of Velva, judged a speech meet there once. And I don't know if you'll ever see Velva in one of these, because that's pretty far away. That is east of Minot, some distance, and that's a long ways from where I live now. But anyway, I judged a speech meet there. The city library and the school library were one and the same. So they were able to pool their budgets and make a really spectacular library for a town that size. And I think that's a cool idea. You know, there's some places where you don't want to do that, but that's why I just think, wow, that's a lot you can do by pairing up two places. Because, you know, school library is used during school hours and then it closes. City library has limited hours. Well, if you put them together, then, you know, if kids need to do research, maybe the library can afford to be open on the weekend. Can be open beyond school hours. And have more resources than a typical library. And same thing for the city library. Now, yes, I know some people say, well, what if objectionable stuff gets in there? And to that I would say, well, okay, I guess I don't have a good response, but in a lot of cases I just think, you know, too far, who cares? You know, if the library has a subscription to Penthouse and they're putting them on the shelves, I say, okay, why are we spending tax dollars on that? But, you know, to use a case of one library I know of, they had subscriptions to gay magazines, and I'm drawing a total blank to what the names of these gay magazines are. But they didn't put them on the shelf because they would get vandalized. So then to get them, you had to check them out. And, oh yeah, and by name, because whatever. So nobody would check them out because, yeah, it's North Dakota, and certain parts of North Dakota, you don't want to be known that you're gay. And so it was just kind of, oh, and nobody checks these out, so we don't need to subscribe to them. So, you know, there is that problem. I would say I don't have a problem with that unless it's one of those magazines that's full of dirty pictures. At the same time, you know, if it's an actual educational thing, what's the harm? You know, an anatomy book, the anatomy book I use in my anatomy class is full of naked pictures. I feel sorry for the person who looks through my anatomy book hoping to get turned on, because, wow, it's anatomy, and that's not the point of it. Go find the real thing, dude, or dudette. So, you know, so people always worry about the, you know, protect the children. Some libraries, you know, oh, we can't have Harry Potter because witchcraft and all that, you know. So, you know, I suppose it takes the right community, but to me, it's just a whole matter of lighten up. Here's this chance to offer more than you could for education and knowledge and free knowledge. You know, isn't that the point of the library? I once told somebody I didn't know that I was a teacher, and boy, did he just kind of erupt into, well, we don't need you, and my kids get all the education they need in the library. You can't control what they read there. As if. What am I trying to control? He just had this awful, weird view of what teachers do. I mean, I'm all about get the information out there. If it hurts your little religious beliefs or whatever, oh well. I mean, let's have Richard Dawkins on the shelves. Let's have a Quran. Let's have a Book of Mormon. Let's have the Hindu books. Yeah, there's a lot of them. You know, let's have evolution on the shelf. Let's have a lot of stuff. You know, I draw the line at porn, but then again, the question is what's porn and what's just got a dirty scene in it or just something somebody might object to. You know, here, what the hell, let's step in it. There were some people in this state objected to Common Core, and they said that the DPI, which is our Department of Public Instruction, had porn on its website. Well, no, they didn't. What they had is Common Core has a list of books that give examples. Okay, here's something you can read that's at this level. Here's something you can read that's at this level. Well, some of those books have dirty scenes in them. Well, they were calling that porn. You know, I don't consider that porn. You know, I might question a certain scene, but overall, I just like, people have sex. I can't shelter the kids forever, and if you think your kids haven't seen it, yeah, your head's in the sand, or you don't have internet and shelter your kids at home. I grew up in the '80s, and believe me, don't tell my parents this, but I'd seen it. By the time I was in, let's see, 7th grade, I'd seen it. And internet was not a thing in the 1980s when I was in 7th grade. So there you go. So it's just a lot of hyperbole and stuff. So, but overall, I just think, what's the harm? If the whole book is sex, 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 yeah. But, if there's a scene in it, depending on how it's written, now, again, the school thing, if it's gratuitous, you might wonder, but it's also part of life. People don't get as upset about violence, yeah, we should show Saving Private Ryan, or to take a big Christian movie, The Passion, or it wasn't called, was it called The Passion of the Christ? The Mel Gibson movie, anyway, that all the Christians had to have their kids see. Well, I know one Christian family took their kid to see it, and for a couple weeks afterwards, he was having nightmares so bad, and, he was like 12 or 13, he couldn't even sleep in his own room. We get so uptight about sex or nudity in this country. Oh, we saw a bare breast. We don't even worry about violence. So, yeah, I got a little editorial there, and if, you're offended by that, then unsubscribe. I don't care. I don't make much money off of this. I am advertising now, though, but that's another story. So anyway, that rant over with, because this whole drive is going to be a whole lot of nothing about small towns. We are coming up on Elgin. We just passed New Leipzig. I didn't bother mentioning it, but we did pass it. Ooh, that got me seasick. The pool is somewhere here. I don't exactly know which building, which edition it's in, but it's there. There you see the side of the school. There you see the elementary edition. The tall part of the building is the old high school. I know they use part of it. I don't know if they use the whole thing. And one of the things that happens with these old schools is sometimes they get condemned. I worked in one that was like that. I don't know if that's the case in Elgin. I just honestly do not know. It looks good from the outside, but I've never been in it. And there's the high school addition to the north there. And then we'll drive through Elgin. Not very interesting. Elgin actually has a decent main street. It's just far enough away from... Mott did too. They're just far enough away that they do have their essential businesses. I'll confide, Elgin isn't one of my favorite towns. It's okay. There's there's a museum there with some old buildings, but it is not one of the most attractive towns I've ever driven through. It's just... Not that my town is some scenic beauty either, but Elgin just... Especially if you stay on the highway, you just sort of go, ugh. Looking north on Main Street, really quickly. Now we're turning south, get back on the highway. And that was Elgin. A lot of empty buildings on Elgin's Main Street. Kind of the story of small town North Dakota. Oil slowed it down for a while, but it's a thing. A lot of these towns were founded by the railroad. If they would have been made bigger and made so that they were further apart, I think more of them would be surviving now. I guess they were set up kind of with the idea of how often you have to refill water with your train. It was back in the days of the steam engine. So, and towns would move just to be along the rail line, because to not be on the rail line was a death sentence. Not so much anymore, but the towns are established. I lived in one town that moved, 2 miles. If they would have stayed at their original location, they were right on the Souris River. It would have been a spectacularly beautiful tourist site. And they're not on the river. And it's not a spectacularly beautiful site. It's just flat. So, yeah, go railroad. By the way, Elgin does have a hospital. It's a very modern hospital. Looking at it without actually looking in it, it looks like one that was built in the 80s. So there is that. Yeah, I'm going to pause recording this now. I'm going to go check on my dumplings. All right, so they're a little firmer, but still unbelievably doughy. You ever eaten a pizza place and you bite into it and they've just layered the toppings on too thick, and it's just all doughy and stretchy inside? Nice and crunchy outside. It's kind of like that. And that's one thing that bothers me about a few pizza places. Go a little lighter on the toppings, then it actually cooks through, or learn how to cook it in general. But, in general, they just lay on the toppings too thick for the way they're cooking it. That's, sorry, that was gross. That's my feeling on this right now. I'm also thinking, when I said, okay, it wants a pound of chicken, I've got 20 ounces of chicken, what's 4 more ounces? I'm definitely seeing the effect of that. And, it said 2 cups of chopped vegetables. Well, I kind of overdid the vegetables too, so, yeah, this soup's a little thicker than it's supposed to be, and flippin' dumplings aren't cooking. Darn it. Alright, so I'm headed north from Elgin to Beulah. I believe this is Highway 41, but I won't swear to it. I know for a fact I'm going to go through the city of Glen Ullin. As I was putting these clips together, I didn't even notice it. I just went through the outskirts of Glen Ullin because by then I knew that, oh, yeah, let's get a move on there, dude, or you're going to miss the cross-country meet. And so I didn't stop. But Glen Ullin it's small. It has a partial main street, mostly because it's far away from everything. It's a few miles off the interstate. Interstates can be a lifeblood to a town. They can also be its death knell, because once you have an interstate, it's like, oh, it's not far to Bismarck. Well, let's just shop there, then there's more choices. And that's what people do. So a lot of the towns near a big city, especially if they're on an interstate, end up with not a lot. So, I don't know what the future is for small town life. One thing I think that's helped change the future of small town life is the internet, because you do have the community. Wow, my hair just looks terrible. You do have the community. I'm sorry. With a small town, what we have now is the internet. So I don't necessarily need to go to a Bismarck to find stuff. I can buy a lot of it online. I've been, especially since our clothing store closed, I've started doing a lot of my clothes shopping online. This isn't from online because I bought it way back, probably about 15 years ago, if you can't tell how stylish it is. But I do know every single other item of clothing I have on right now, I've bought online. It's just the thing we can do now. So I see a lot of businesses disappearing, not just from the small towns, but maybe from the cities too. I won't say whether that's good or bad. It's just a thing. In books, I was actually in Bismarck this fall. I filmed it, but I had the same trouble with this dash cam that I had before. So I don't know if you'll get to see that footage. But usually, I always used to stop at Barnes & Noble. This time I just thought, why? So I didn't. And online also provides a lot of social opportunities. If you live in a small town, you might feel isolated. Like, who are my other fountain pen people? Well, okay, I don't need them locally because I can find them online. Entertainment options. There's just no movies here in this small town. We don't get the movies till later, and it's only one screen in the theater. Well, I can watch a movie online too. I actually don't really like movie theaters anyway. I just don't like the environment for watching a movie. I don't know why. I just don't. So there is a lot more available. Even working, a lot of people. I know a few people who live here in my little small town that telecommute. Every couple of weeks they've got to go to a meeting in the city where they're employed from. But mostly, like, one lives on a farm here in southwestern North Dakota. It's okay. He just telecommutes to work. As long as he gets his work done, it's all good. Now, there's some research being done about whether you get the productivity and such when you're telecommuting. I'm not an expert, so I don't know. By the way, fun fact, we're coming up on Lake Tashida. If I had not had the fog to slow me down, how I took you through Mott and Elgin really quickly there? I actually would have stopped, gotten out of my car, and taken pictures. I'd never been to Lake Tashida before. I didn't know what to expect, but this is beautiful. It is an artificial lake. It's not natural, but it's still very nice looking. So you're about to see it. I'm going to slow the car down for that brief instant when you can see it. Has a lot of bays and such off of it, so there's a lot more to the lake than what you're going to see here, which is why it would have been nice to stop and explore, but it is what it is. So we'll look to your left, which is west. Definitely a lot of trees there. Oh, they've got water. Yeah, there's Lake Tashida. Not as big as like Lake Sakakawea, but pretty big. And it's somehow related to flood control. And there's I guess I'm driving over the dam. There's a nice valley on the other side. So, yeah, that would have been fun to actually stop and use the camera and take some pictures. But as it was, I barely had time. So, it's good I didn't stop and take pictures. So some other time, I don't know when I'll get through Lake Tashida again, but I want to. And we're back at 4 times speed, headed north. I feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit, but I've talked about small towns before. And one of the things oil did is it slowed down the shrinkage of the small towns, at least in western North Dakota, and to a lesser extent eastern North Dakota, because they got some overflow. But it did slow down the shrinkage. A few small towns were brought back to life. A few small towns were changed forever, like Watford City has become a city now. It used to be a town about the size of what I live in. It is now a city. A lot of oil field workers set up homes there. Now, yes, a lot of people bailed out when the oil prices fell, but there's still so many people there that, yeah, it's never going to go back to being the sleepy small town it was. Until the oil runs out, then all bets are off. And, that is something to think about. Will we run out of oil? Well, I'll leave that to geologists and experts. My personal hope is that before we run out of oil, we move on to other alternative energy sources, but, opinion. I have reasons for that opinion, but it is just opinion. I don't always like the sight of windmills, but I like the idea of windmills, so that makes me accept them better. The windmills are actually free energy, and they're using it. Hoping windmill technology improves a lot. Solar power can get a bad rap, but actually countries like Germany are showing that, yeah, solar power is not what it was back in the 70s. It's much better now than it used to be. I was looking at an experimental hot water heater, totally solar powered in Fargo at the university that was really cool, and it was designed for North Dakota situation with snow. So it was designed so the solar... like I said, it was a water heater, but the solar thingies, drawing a blank what they were called, they had a name for them. But anyway, they were in tubes, so snow could fall between the tubes and not block the sun. Well, that was clever, because when you have a big, solid solar panel, it'll be like this. Well, then the snow can just sit on it. I mean, that's what it does on the roof of my house all winter, which does tell me I have decent insulation. So, they're considering that also for solar panels in North Dakota. So yeah, there's lots of options for places that don't have as much sunlight as you would expect. Yeah, you have to store it in batteries, but battery technology is really improving too. True story, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I know an older lady who grew up actually in the same house where her father grew up. Her father is currently 98, so make your guesses about her age. Anyway, when she grew up, there was no electricity where they lived. But they had electricity in their house because what they had out in the yard was a windmill with a generator. And what it did, most of their basement was taken up by batteries and I guess they had a cellar and stuff down there too, but batteries that this windmill would charge all day, and they would run their electric lights. I forget what all she said they ran off of it. They didn't have electric appliances like we do now, but they ran lights and a couple minor things off these batteries that were charged with the windmill that was out in the yard. It was an old-fashioned windmill, of course, it's still there. So I thought that was interesting. I didn't inquire what happened to the batteries when the electricity finally came. You know, going by the time that this all was, I'm scared to think where these batteries would have gone. And back then, they would have been lead-acid batteries. So, woo boy! Don't drink the water at her house. But anyway, it's not a new thing, but the battery technology is better. And the recycling of batteries is better. So I, as much as people like the oil industry and the coal industry in my state, I don't think it's the future. You know, I think oil will not disappear entirely, especially oil. The nice thing with oil is it's not just a fuel. A lot of your plastics and lubricants and fertilizers and stuff can be made using oil. So I think the uses for oil will change, but I see a future where it stops being, well, heck, what's this? This is not a cotton sweater. But the uses for oil will change in the future. And it won't be so much just, let's burn it so we can drive. You know, some people like mass transit. I like the concept. My problem with mass transit is when you live in a place like where I do, it really doesn't make sense. I mean, how is mass transit going to cover people going from my town to, say, Dickinson? There just aren't enough of us doing it in a day to make that feasible. So some kind of individual transit is necessary. But I think in cities or more heavily populated, old school, cities or more heavily populated areas, mass transit makes a lot of sense. If it could be made feasible where I live, I'd love that. I can't picture it, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. I guess I could carpool. There is that possibility. But I think there's more to do with mass transit in the future. You know, and people get upset with subsidizing mass transit, and they forget what paid for this road here. Tax dollars. So we're subsidizing individual transit, and people don't quite realize that. So, you know, that is... you know, why don't we fund mass transit? If you have a good mass transit system, I'll tell you the best thing about mass transit from my perspective, I hate driving. So maybe if I have to drive for a half hour or an hour, you know, maybe I could live in my small town and then commute into work on the train or the bus or whatever and just kind of read or do whatever on the way. You know, catch up on my news in the morning. That's what I do now anyway, but you know, I don't drive to work either. I walk to work, so, you know, my commute's pretty easy, so I guess I don't really care that way. But, you know, that's what I would do if I lived somewhere more heavily populated. There are things about it I've definitely thought about it. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but I have thought about it. You know, I've also thought, do I want to keep living in North Dakota, or would I like to live somewhere with more options and more people like me around? You know, I don't know. But then I get out into the prairie, and I really like that whole being alone thing. So, I don't know. But anyway, but there's definitely more options. And, you know, the trouble with all these things is they get so they're not based so much on science and measurement and objective fact. They get so they're based more on feeling and opinion and politics, and not so much on the actual data. You know, I just spouted off a whole bunch of things. Most people, though, won't realize that is subsidized very heavily. Me driving the car is subsidized. The road didn't build itself. Few of the extreme libertarians will suggest toll roads, but again, it's not going to look like this if it has to pay for itself. In fact, the whole state of North Dakota has only paid for itself a few years. Overall, by the way, on the right is the Glen Ellen School somewhere. Uh, I know it was there. It just doesn't show up well in the dash cam. Anyway, the state of North Dakota mostly is a taker state. Yeah, for a year or two here and there, we've paid our way because of oil, but overall, we would not have the state budget we do if it weren't for the federal government subsidizing us. A lot of people don't like to admit that, especially in these red states, but a lot of the red states get a big chunk of money from the federal government. They get more money from the federal government than they pay in. Yeah, true story. A lot of blue states, and I don't know if it has to do with the politics so much as the types of industries that are there. And honestly, a rural state is more spread out, but has to provide the same services. It's a lot harder. If there were people all along this, they'd be paying taxes. Well, it's agriculture, so they pay a lot less taxes than if these were all houses. But it's still a 2-lane paved road, just like you find in a very heavily populated state. So that's why we're all in it together. A very heavily populated state can't have the room for the agriculture like my low populated state. We provide in a lot of different ways, and that's one thing I don't like with our current political climate. It's always us against them, and there's a lot of people that seem to think we are subsidizing welfare in California, but we're not. California pays more in taxes than it gets back from the federal government. We are not subsidizing them. And a couple states have just gone so extreme. Now, I will concede that there are a few issues in California that I don't care for. But, Kansas is a state I will never live in until they get rid of that awful governor they have. He's taken politics and his ideas on economics to the extreme that he's actually hurting his state. That can happen on the liberal side, too. That's why we need each other to balance. You get too extreme one way or the other, you've got problems. So we got to balance each other. But when we start saying, well, the other side is the demon, devil. Oops, yeah, all these pens are suddenly sliding down the side of the couch. When we start demonizing those who don't think like us, well, how do you reason? How do you get along? How do you share their good ideas? How do you temper their ideas so that it matches your ideas? You can't do that. And so political extremism is a problem. And I don't know a way to fix it. I think, honestly, in this election, it's gotten worse. I will be voting I'm not going to tell you who it is, but you can probably guess. I will be voting for a candidate in November that, honestly, until this election, I never would have thought I would have voted for this candidate. I would have always said, yeah, I'll never vote for that one, because, and then this candidate ran against somebody who was much, 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 much worse. And, to the point that I am scared of the other candidate actually getting into office. So, isn't that terrible that I'm voting that way? I'm excited about this candidate. No, I'm scared of the other one getting into office. And I hate that. Absolutely hate that. So, get a bit political here, because what the hell, I've done some politics already. I look forward to the day when we get a candidate who runs for office that I'm actually excited about. Now, this here is a kind of a not very windy, but by North Dakota standards, kind of windy road. I've heard some people describe it as really crooked, but it's not somebody who grew up on the East Coast. But, it does have some twists and turns and ups and downs and so on. But it'll take you into Beulah. I will stop right at the golf course. Yes, cross-country is run on golf courses normally. In some communities, they've actually stopped letting the cross-country team run on the golf course. I'm not, without knowing the individual stories, I don't know why. My feeling is the kids are your next generation. You should try to work with them. But I think sometimes people start seeing the kids as the enemy or the school as the enemy, so they get mad at the school, and the kids are the ones that pay the price. Mott, for example, they voted down building a new school on land that was donated to them. And I just think part of that might have had to do with them saying, oh, I don't want to pay more tax dollars. Meanwhile, they're sending their kids to a crap building, and I don't mean that as hyperbole. I mean that as it is a crap building. The kids pay the price. Well, I don't have kids, so I don't care. You don't benefit from the kids getting educated, being taxpayers in the future. Well, I won't. Don't take this as being representative of Mott, but there are a certain number of people who just do not value the product of education. They'll call public schools child indoctrination centers. It's just that attitude is so far out there. Or the people who just honestly don't believe that there's any societal benefit from education. Well, people with kids should pay for it. My grandparents thought that way. Never mind, especially my grandmother ended up in a nursing home in the failing days of her life. Well, she definitely benefited from having schools around to educate the nurses and so on that worked with her. She just doesn't see it that way. Education is so valuable as a societal thing. That's why other people from other countries where that maybe is not as available come to the United States and do so well because they just see all of these opportunities to be better that weren't available in their home country. And meanwhile, parents and kids here are like, oh, it's no fun when my kid has to do homework because I have to be all mean. There's just this gulf. I think life has gotten too easy here in the United States. Now, some areas, I think maybe they've overcome that a bit. I think Finland has found a good balance. And I say that as an outsider who doesn't live there. I imagine if I start talking to Finnish teachers, they'll have things to complain about. But, there are countries that value education. I just wish the United States was one of them. When we're sending kids out of school during school hours to play a ball game, where are your priorities? Well, I don't want to give up my weekend to go watch my kid play football. Yeah, why'd you have a kid if you don't want to give up any time to deal with your kid? It's just education should be the focus of schools. That's one of the reasons I'm going to this cross-country meet. It's on a Saturday morning. Perfect time to have a cross-country meet. They're not in school. Yes, it's a hell of a hike up to Beulah, but they're not in school. Now, cross-country does take kids out of school, so I hold that against it. And when you take kids out of school, you are sending the message that, oh yeah, sport is more important than school. Especially you get these teachers like, well, nobody's here. Half the class is gone. I've been guilty of that sometimes. When nobody is in the classroom, am I going to teach to an empty classroom? What do you do? I'd like a better answer to that. So, anyway, I just wish the United States valued education. And I wish these extremists would just wake up and join the real world. People who say school is a chance to have social change, they're going a little bit far too. But like, for example, we have, not in my state, thank God, not that I'm real thrilled with our gubernatorial election this year, but I'm not embarrassed by it either, like I am the national presidential election. Or if I lived in Montana, the gubernatorial election going on over there, they've got an outspoken creationist running for governor. And that's one of the things his opponent is using against him, that he's a creationist. Well, they should use it against him, because here's the problem. If you're a creationist, these are the people that believe God created the earth in 7 literal days, you're saying, I value my myth more than I value evidence. And I don't care if... Okay, I do care. Somebody whose thinking is guided by myth rather than evidence, you start to think, okay, what else is guided by your myth and your beliefs rather than evidence? You know, are you going to make economic decisions in my state based on evidence or myth? You know, several of our candidates for president, sorry to say, on the Republican side, were open creationists. So you might say, well, that doesn't matter if you're a creationist when you're president. Well, yes, it does, because if you are guided by myth and belief on that issue, what else are you guided by? You know, are you going to do economic policy because you believe that trickle-down economics works without evidence? You know, that's not a criticism of trickle-down economics. That's another topic. But, you know, if you believe it's a good thing because Ronald Reagan introduced it, Now, if you have evidence, yes, there is room for debate in economics. Now, if you believe that we need to get rid of the Department of Education because government's too big, have you actually thought that through? What does the Department of Education do? You know, I would like to see a few things about it changed myself. I wouldn't say it's useless. Department of... Okay, that one is not a federal one. Sorry, I just was about to say one that's not a federal one, but it's a North Dakota one, so we'll set that one aside. Environmental Protection Agency, Post Office, Department of Defense. You know, what are you going to cut? You actually don't hear too many people proposing cutting the military. Look at the national budget. It's a big chunk of our budget. But anyway, the big thing is, because I'm not trying to be a political video, is somebody who makes their decisions based on belief rather than evidence shouldn't be elected into office. You know, I believe that health problems are caused by diet. Huh? Oh, it's spiritual imbalance that's causing your health problems. Huh? There are people dying over in Idaho because they believe there are parents who believe that God doesn't want them to use modern medicine, and the stupid legislature lets them get away with it. Oh, sorry, your kid died because you wanted to use faith healing. That sucks for you, doesn't it? Better luck next time with that faith healing thing. They actually won't go to jail. You know, to me, denying your kid medical care so the kid dies or suffers permanent physical harm, that's child abuse. But belief got in the way. Legislators actually made that law, and a governor must have signed it into law. Why didn't this asshole governor veto it, whoever it is? You know, I'm happy to say that defense does not exist in my state. North Dakota has its problems, but if some parent kills their kid because they believe in faith healing, you're going to jail in North Dakota. And I think that's good, and I want the state to stay that way. You know, as right-wing as this state is, it is surprising how progressive some of the things about this state are. And that's one of them. You do not see, I mean, they're around, but you don't see the religious fundamentalists and such. That, by the way, is one of the several coal plants around Beulah. I don't know if this is the one, but there's a couple of them have experimented with various methods of carbon sequestration. I can't remember if in the next video you'll see some of the drag lines, but they are huge. It's just kind of interesting. So this coal thing is what keeps Beulah going. They weren't affected much by oil. It's mostly coal. And the thing with coal is it's less cyclical. I mean, it has its ups and downs, but they're not as bad as the oil industry. So Beulah is a little more stable economically that way. Still has ups and downs, but not as bad. I don't know. Right now we have a lot of coal plants in North Dakota. On the set of videos that's still on here, because I don't know if I can get them off, because the same not formatted error happened. I do take you past Stanton, where one coal plant closed down, and all the conservatives in the state are blaming EPA regulations. Never mind, it was an old plant and about ready to be decommissioned anyway. You know, people are just so uptight about that. And do you want to breathe dirty air? You know, I like the fact that they have to keep them clean. Yeah, so it makes power a little more expensive. Let's think about this. You know, only someone with their head absolutely in the sand, or governed entirely by belief and not scientific fact, will say the temperatures aren't rising. Now, yes, there's room to talk about the reasons why they're rising, but we know CO2 and temperatures are both going up. All right, so I'm going to turn in here at the golf course. I like Beulah's golf course. I don't golf at all, but they share a football field and this golf course. It's kind of a big rec area, and it's really, really nice, actually. And it's kind of a flood zone, but you know, if the football field floods, oh well. So I just really like it. The golf course is one of my favorites for taking pictures across country. And we'll see how much more hippie environmentalist stuff I can do in the next video. In the meantime, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.